Marc Marquez arrived at Silverstone 18 points off the championship lead, on the bike that had just swept Germany, coming off a weekend at the Sachsenring the paddock called perfect. He left 7th, 40 points down, beaten by two Ducatis that are not supposed to beat him. The paddock filed it under tyre wear. His own garage heard something completely different. Before Marquez said a single word to the cameras, he told his crew he had lost control of his right arm and was riding at the risk of crashing. So why was the version he gave the cameras so much softer? And why did it take Ducati's own garage footage to show how bad it got? A radio complaint is a normal part of a race weekend. It stops being normal when the body part attached to it is that right arm. That is the arm that shattered at Jerez in 2020, took 4 operations to rebuild, and removed most of 4 seasons from the middle of his career. It is the same right side surgeons opened again this May in Madrid, when they took 2 screws and a bone fragment out of his shoulder, left by a 2019 operation, because the hardware had shifted onto his radial nerve. So Marquez saying the arm stopped answering him is not a rider softening a bad Sunday. It is a rider describing the one piece of equipment he has already lost once, and what he chose to say in public was nothing like it. From the outside, Silverstone looked like an ordinary bad weekend. He qualified 6th. He ran 9th in the sprint and watched riders come past him in the closing laps. On Sunday, he crossed the line 7th, 9.5 seconds behind Raul Fernandez, 3rd best Ducati of the day behind his own brother Alex and Fabio Di Gianantonio. In public, he kept it clean and technical. He said the bike and the tyre had both worked fine, that 7th was what they could expect on paper, and that his own endurance was the thing he needed to improve. That explanation had one very useful quality. It was completely undramatic. Endurance is a training problem, and a training problem gets fixed with weeks in a gym. It travels well in a championship year because it promises nothing is broken. The problem is that a man who raced against Marquez for a decade watched the same race and refused to sign off on it. He was not guessing from a television feed either. He was on track, in the same conditions, on the same tyres, the same afternoon. Pol Espargaro was at Silverstone as a stand-in, riding a KTM in place of the injured Maverick Vinales. He is a test rider now, which means reading other people's races is literally his job. And he has spent 10 years being beaten by this specific opponent. He watched the whole thing and landed somewhere that had nothing to do with grip. I think he's been holding back throughout the race, and that's not the Marc we know, Espargaro said. Then he pushed it further. He's an explosive, fast, electric guy. When you can't do that because you know the rear tyre is going to die sooner or later, and it's going to die very abruptly, it's obvious the results aren't good. Espargaro was still explaining it through the tyre. The observation underneath is the part that matters. The most aggressive rider of his generation spent an entire Grand Prix managing instead of attacking, and it was visible from another bike on track. And there is one more piece of that same debrief that nobody has put next to it. It was said inside the garage, minutes after the flag, before anybody had time to agree on a story. When Marquez came back into the Ducati garage, he did not lead with grip. "Today the tyre was better," he told his team. "Physically, I wasn't there." Then came the line that should have ended the tyre conversation permanently. "I was at risk of crashing. I had no control over my right arm." Take those two statements in order. The tyre was better. The rider was not. The public explanation and the private one are not the same story at the same volume. One is a training note. The other is a rider saying he nearly crashed. Now, put that against how Marquez actually rides. His entire advantage is built on braking later than the man in front, holding the bike on the edge of the front tyre, and saving the moments that would put anyone else on the floor. That requires a right arm that does exactly what it is told, instantly under load. He has already admitted where it is going wrong. He is slower now in the flowing corners that used to be his strength, slower in the right-handers, and he has been blunt about the reason. So the question hanging over the rest of this season is not whether Ducati can find grip at Aragon. It is whether the rider they built the season around still owns the tool that made him worth building around. Here is where it stops being one bad weekend. The arm has never behaved like a normal injury, and Marquez said so himself before the surgery. At home, he felt fine. On a motocross bike, he felt fine. Only in a MotoGP riding position did the thing collapse, and he described the mechanism with unusual precision. When something is touching the nerve, the arm is not doing what you want it to do, he said. That is the exact sensation he reported at Silverstone. Not pain, not fatigue, loss of command. And the May operation was never designed to fix what he is complaining about now. The target was the nerve, not the strength. Marquez confirmed the nerve part had worked when he came back at Mugello. No numbness in the hands, the fingers or the elbows, and then added the sentence everybody skipped past. Honestly speaking, I was thinking that I would feel better on the bike. Ducati has known all of this for months. Davide Tardozzi said back in June that the doctors had told Ducati it would be September at least. So the team took a rider their own timeline called unfit into one of the most physically punishing circuits on the calendar in August, and then called 7th place what they could expect on paper. People thought Silverstone exposed a Ducati setup weakness. It exposed a recovery schedule that the championship is not waiting for. Let us be honest about what actually happened in England. The bike was not the problem. Alex Marquez finished 4th on an independent team's Ducati, and Di Giannantonio took 6th on another one, while the factory rider came home 7th. Motivation was not the problem either. A man 29 points off a title lead does not spend a Sunday conserving effort for fun. The problem was the right arm, and the strongest evidence is the order in which he said it. He told his crew first, in the moment, with the adrenaline still up. By the time he reached the media, it had been sanded down to endurance, which is the version that costs nobody anything. That sequence is not an accident. That is what a rider does when the truth is more expensive than the excuse. And the cost is now measurable. He went to England 18 points behind Jorge Martin. He came home 40 behind, with 10 rounds left, and 3 Aprilias sitting between him and the top of the table. Ducati can rebuild a setup between races. It cannot rebuild an arm between races, and this is the second time in 6 years that this exact arm has decided a season. The real question was never whether Marquez can win a title from 40 points back. It is whether the arm arrives before the calendar runs out. Is the garage version the real one, or the camera version? Let us know in the comments below. And once you do that, make sure to click on the video appearing on your screen right now.